Well, we are well into summer squash season, and today we are cooking with yellow crookneck squash. So this is a super simple, basic recipe. So tonight I'm cooking, and I'm using yellow crookneck squash. So this is a summer squash, cubrita pepero, I should say. And this has been one of my favorites for years. I really like the flavor of these. As many of you know, we've made that conscious decision to grow these instead of zucchinis. And part of that is because I find these way more versatile, although a little more difficult to find recipes for than zucchini. So tonight we are basically doing a Parmesan squash type recipe. Super simple, super basic, and doesn't take a lot of time. So there is basically the ingredients. I'm using yellow crookneck summer squash, which I'll talk about in a moment. Some rotini, although you could use kind of any pasta if you really wanted to. I just like this because it'll take some of the sauce and Parmesan cheese. We're using Parmesan cheese, some homemade garlic scape butter, some lamb lard to basically fry up the squash in, and a little bit of toasted sesame because I really like sesame. So my error, this is actually garlic scape pesto, which we actually do have a video on, which I'll link up above. But you could use any kind of pesto. Before I get into it too much, I am putting some pasta in here. Now, we have been trying to cut down the amount of pasta we're eating, so I'm not going to make very much. This recipe isn't an exact science, so you just kind of modify it to how many people you're feeding. And for the summer squash, we're basically going to use 6 of these because most of them are about this size, so they're quite young and tender. And that would be one thing I would suggest with this recipe. You want to make sure you're using quite young squash. You don't want ones that are quite woody, because that's one thing about this type of squash is it will go a little woody, and you definitely don't want to use those ones. They're better for freezing. So step 1 is obviously cutting the squash. So because it's a crookneck type squash, we cut the necks up into little circles. You could cut them up however you really want. And then for the main part of the body, we cut them into little almost like triangle type wedges. Now you'll see there is some seeds in there, but when you pick them young like this, those seeds are completely edible and we just cook it whole. It doesn't really need to be removed. If they were getting a little older, you might want to remove those before cooking this because they can be a little bit woody. Okay, well this is very simple. I'm just going to use our wok. Makes a nice big dish to cook this in. Now, I am using lamb lard, which we have quite a bit of, but you can use any kind of oil if you have vegetable oil or olive oil or various types of lard if you want. This is just to get, this is in the fridge so it's a little cold, this is just to get some oil in the pan so that the squash doesn't burn and cooks instead. We've become big fans of using this lamb lard for cooking. Now I also have 2 of these containers of the garlic scape pesto, which I forget the exact size of these, but again, this recipe is kind of a choose your own adventure to your own taste. So I'm going to put the 2 of these in because we discussed it and we thought with the 4 of us, 2 of these would probably be better than just the 1. And next is the squash. You can see it's all cut up here. It's just going straight in. And you're basically just trying to cook that to kind of a soft consistency. So I'm not exactly sure how long this will take here. Just kind of get that spread around. You can see it's very simple. You could add salt and pepper to taste if you would like. I might add a little bit here just because we've got quite a bit. And the only other thing I'm going to add, because I like it, is toasted sesame. I just find it's good oil to add to any kind of stir fry like this. So there we go. That is pretty much that. We'll let those cook and bring you back to the next step. So I've turned this down to a bit of a simmer, and I am adding some black pepper to this. Looks like a lot, but it won't be when I get it all mixed around. And I am adding a little bit of salt, not a lot. So you could, if you wanted, add other stuff to this recipe. This is sort of the base yellow crookneck squash recipe. Something that I have found in the past is sometimes when this is in season, this is a really nice, simple thing to make because it doesn't take very long, and it tastes pretty good when you've kind of been working late into the evening as we were earlier today making apple juice. So definitely stay tuned for that video as well. You can see there we're getting pretty close. The squash is starting to soften up really nicely, and our pasta is almost done. So it's almost time to drain that and add it to our squash. This is ready. I'm now going to just turn the heat off. Give it a bit of a stir, make sure they're all kind of soft. They're still a little firm, but they're definitely cooked. You kind of don't want them completely mush. And add it to the mixture. And then the next part is just as simple as sort of mixing this in, trying to get some good coverage on the pasta. Ends up kind of looking like a squash pasta salad or something. The nice part is with the garlic scape pesto and the lard from the lamb, everything gets quite spread around pretty good on all the pasta and the squash, which is what you want. And then last but not least, I'm going to add some Parmesan to this and kind of mix it in here as I go. I'm going to add a little bit more, but you don't need a ton, which is kind of nice. So there we go. That is ready to dish up. And there's the finished product. It's got nice color. And it's pretty simple. We're going to basically have this as our main meal, but you can also do this as a side to something else. To be honest, this is the base recipe. We're getting quite a bit of yellow crookneck squash right now, so I might even try this with a little bit of lamb meat in it or something. The world's your oyster as far as what you can do with this, but hopefully you enjoyed this video, and maybe it gives you some ideas of what you can do with your own summer squash, because you can substitute any of the summer squashes that stay a bit firmer. So the patty pans, any of the yellow squashes, the yellow crookneck squash of course is my favorite, but they will all work.